What kind of person screams for justice while standing ankle-deep in a lie? In the heart of Willow Park, where joggers weave through autumn leaves and dog walkers exchange polite nods, a single moment shattered the morning calm. Karen Whitaker, a woman whose presence seemed to demand attention, stood by a muddy puddle, her voice piercing the air like a siren. Her floral dress clung to her frame, damp and streaked with mud, as she pointed a trembling finger at a young jogger, Maya Chan. Maya, a slight woman in her 20s with sweat-soaked running gear, stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. Karen's accusations rang out, shrill and unrelenting, drawing a small crowd of early risers. She claimed Maya had deliberately splashed her, ruining her dress and her dignity. The crowd murmured, some nodding sympathetically, others skeptical. As Karen's voice grew louder, her face contorted with righteous fury. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had been running her usual loop, lost in the rhythm of her sneakers against the path, when Karen appeared out of nowhere, blocking her way. Before Maya could react, she felt a sharp push, her balance faltering as she stumbled into the puddle. The cold water soaked her shoes, and she barely caught herself before falling. Now, standing accused, she tried to speak, but Karen's tirade drowned her out. "You think you can just run over people like that?" Karen shouted, her hands on her hips, her face a mask of indignation. "I'm calling the police. You'll pay for this." Maya's heart raced. She was a college student working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and the last thing she needed was a legal mess. Her voice, soft and shaking, barely carried. "I didn't do anything," she said, but the crowd's eyes were on Karen, whose theatrics held them captive. The park, usually a haven of quiet, buzzed with tension. A dog walker, an older man with a gray beard, hesitated, his phone in hand, unsure whether to record or intervene. A young woman nearby, clutching a coffee cup, whispered to her friend, "She's lying, isn't she?" But Karen's performance was convincing, her voice cracking with feigned hurt as she recounted her assault. Maya felt the weight of judgment pressing down on her. She wasn't confrontational by nature. She avoided conflict like it was a storm to outrun. But something in Karen's smug certainty sparked a flicker of defiance in her. She straightened, her voice steadier now. "You pushed me," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. A few heads turned, but Karen laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Oh, please, you're just trying to cover your tracks." As the accusations flew, a man in a bright orange vest emerged from the crowd. His name was Tom, a park maintenance worker who had been clearing leaves nearby. He was in his 40s, with a weathered face and a calm demeanor that seemed out of place in the chaos. He held up his phone, his expression unreadable. "I saw the whole thing," he said, his voice cutting through Karen's rant like a blade. The crowd fell silent. Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing as if she'd tasted something sour. "And?" she snapped, crossing her arms. Tom didn't flinch. "I've got it on video." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise. Maya's heart leapt, a surge of hope breaking through her fear. Karen's face twitched, but she doubled down, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "A video? Convenient. Probably fake." Tom didn't respond. He tapped his phone, and the small crowd gathered closer, their curiosity outweighing their doubt. The video played, the screen grainy but clear enough. It showed Maya jogging, her pace steady, her focus on the path ahead. Karen stepped into her path, her movements deliberate, her hands shoving Maya toward the puddle. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Maya's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of relief. The truth was out, undeniable, captured in pixels. Karen's face drained of color, but she wasn't done yet. "That's edited," she insisted, her voice shrill now, bordering on panic. "You people are always against me." The mood shifted. The crowd, once swayed by Karen's theatrics, now looked at her with suspicion. The dog walker shook his head, muttering under his breath. The young woman with the coffee cup stepped forward, her voice firm. "You can't just lie like that and expect to get away with it." Karen's eyes darted between faces, searching for an ally, but found none. Maya, emboldened by the video, took a step forward. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice breaking not with fear but with genuine confusion. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, her bravado crumbling under the weight of exposure. For a moment, the park was silent, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the breeze. The confrontation escalated as the crowd's murmurs grew into a chorus of disapproval. Karen's confidence, once a blazing fire, flickered under the scrutiny of Tom's video. She clutched her purse, her knuckles white, and tried to pivot. "This is harassment," she cried, her voice climbing to a pitch that made a nearby dog whimper. "You're all ganging up on me." But the crowd wasn't buying it. The young woman with the coffee cup, whose name was Lila, stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "You pushed her," she said, pointing at Maya. "We all saw it. You can't just make things up and ruin someone's life." Karen's face twisted, her lips curling into a sneer. "Ruin her life? She's the one who attacked me." The lie was desperate now, clinging to her like damp fabric. Maya, though shaken, felt a fire kindling inside her. She wasn't alone anymore. The crowd's support, tentative at first, grew stronger with each passing second. Tom, still holding his phone, spoke again. "I've sent the video to the park office," he said calmly. "They'll forward it to the police if needed." Karen's eyes widened, a flash of fear breaking through her facade. "Police?" she sputtered. "For what? A little misunderstanding?" But it wasn't a misunderstanding, and everyone knew it. The video had stripped away her narrative, leaving only the raw truth. Karen had shoved Maya, then lied to paint herself as the victim. Then came the twist, a revelation that hit like a gust of wind through the park. Lila, the coffee cup woman, raised her voice, her tone sharp with emotion. "You did this to my brother last year," she said, her eyes locked on Karen. The crowd turned, startled. Lila's hands trembled as she spoke. "You accused him of stealing your phone at the market. He lost his job because of it. It took months to clear his name." Her voice cracked, and Maya saw tears in her eyes. The crowd's energy shifted again, a wave of anger rippling through them. Karen's face went pale, her mouth opening as if to protest, but no words came. Lila's revelation wasn't just a story, it was a wound, reopened in front of everyone. Maya's heart ached for Lila, for her brother, for the unseen others Karen might have hurt. The confrontation reached its peak as the crowd closed in, not physically but with their words, their presence. A retired teacher, her hair streaked with silver, spoke up. "You need to apologize," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "This isn't right." Others nodded, their faces a mix of pity and frustration. Karen's eyes darted, searching for an escape, but the circle of truth was tightening. Maya, bolstered by Lila's courage, found her voice again. "You didn't just lie," she said, her tone steady despite the tears in her eyes. "You tried to humiliate me." "Why?" It was the same question she'd asked before, but now it carried the weight of the crowd's judgment. Karen's defiance cracked. She took a step back, her heels splashing in the puddle she'd used as her prop. "You don't understand," she muttered, her voice low, almost pleading. I was upset." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest she'd come to admitting fault. The crowd wasn't satisfied. Tom shook his head. "Upset doesn't give you the right to hurt people," he said. Lila, still trembling, added, "You hurt my brother. You almost hurt her. When does it stop?" The question hung unanswered, heavy in the air. Karen's shoulders slumped, her bravado gone, replaced by something that looked like shame but felt too shallow to trust. The police arrived minutes later, 2 officers in crisp uniforms stepping onto the scene. The crowd parted, and Tom handed over his phone, explaining the situation with a calm that contrasted Karen's growing panic. The officers watched the video, their expressions unreadable. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes, turned to Karen. "Ma'am, we need to talk," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Karen's face crumpled, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "This is a mistake," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. The officer gestured for her to step aside, and the crowd watched in silence as Karen, for the first time, looked small. The fallout was swift and merciless, like autumn leaves stripped by a storm. Karen's lies unraveled under the weight of the video evidence, and the police took her statement with a professionalism that felt like a quiet rebuke. She was charged with assault and filing a false report, minor offenses in the grand scheme but heavy with consequence. The crowd dispersed, some shaking their heads, others whispering about justice served. Maya stood by the puddle, her sneakers still wet, her heart a tangle of relief and exhaustion. Lila approached her, her eyes softer now. "I'm sorry you went through that," she said, her voice thick with empathy. Maya nodded, unable to find words but grateful for the connection. Tom, the maintenance worker, gave her a small smile before turning back to his work, his phone now a symbol of truth in a moment of chaos. Karen's downfall wasn't just legal, it was social, personal, complete. Word spread through the town, carried by park regulars and amplified by local news. The video, shared online by an anonymous bystander, went viral, tagged with hashtags like Justice for Maya and Karen Caught Lying. Karen's name became a cautionary tale, a synonym for entitlement unchecked. She stopped coming to the park, her absence as loud as her presence had been. Maya heard whispers that Karen had moved away, unable to face the community's judgment. But for Maya, the victory was bittersweet. She didn't want Karen destroyed, she wanted her to understand the harm she'd caused, to change. That hope felt fragile, but it lingered. The inspiring truth emerged in the weeks that followed. Maya, shaken but unbroken, returned to the park, her runs a quiet act of defiance. She wasn't just reclaiming her routine, she was reclaiming her voice. Lila became a friend, their bond forged in shared pain and resilience. Together, they started a small community group, a safe space for people to share stories of being unfairly accused, of standing up to bullies like Karen. The group grew, drawing in others who had felt the sting of false blame. Lila's brother, a quiet man named Marcus, became one of its strongest voices. He spoke of losing his job, his dignity, but also of rebuilding, of finding strength in truth. Maya listened, her heart swelling with pride for these strangers-turned allies. The park itself seemed to heal. The puddle dried up, the path smoothed over by Tom's steady hands. But the memory of that day lingered, a reminder that truth could cut through lies like sunlight through fog. Maya's runs became more than exercise. They were a celebration of survival, of standing tall when someone tried to knock her down. She thought of Karen sometimes, wondering if she'd ever reflect on her actions, if she'd ever feel the weight of the lives she'd disrupted. But that wasn't Maya's burden to carry. Her burden was to keep moving, to keep believing in the goodness of people like Tom, Lila, and Marcus. One crisp morning, months later, Maya paused by the spot where it all happened. The tree stump nearby, weathered and unassuming, bore the faint carving of that day's headline. Karen's lie exposed by video. It was fading now, softened by time and rain, but it still held power. Maya traced the letters with her finger, a quiet smile on her lips. She wasn't defined by Karen's lie, nor by the puddle that had briefly swallowed her courage. She was defined by her choice to stand up, to speak, to keep running. And as she took off down the path, her stride strong and sure, the park seemed to cheer her on, its leaves whispering a truth that no lie could silence. Justice, when fought for, could light the way forward.